This is ImmunoAfrica, a podcast dedicated to spotlighting African immunology research.
Hello, I'm excited to have you join me on this edition of ImmunoAfrica's Graduate Student Series. This series offers emerging and aspiring immunologists the opportunity to connect with, learn from, and be inspired by some of the most talented immunology graduate students from Africa. This year, we peek into the fascinating work and busy lives of 4 immunologists in training, representing 3 African countries, Benin, Mozambique, and Nigeria. Vania, Segun, Onyeka, and Deo-Gracias joined me to talk about the challenges they are addressing in the field of immunology, which include training immune cells to fight cancers better, protecting fetuses from maternal parasitic infections, characterizing immune responses locally, and designing a multi-target vaccine. Away from their diverse interests and unique journeys, these talented scientists are driven by a singular purpose, an unwavering commitment to helping Africa realize its full potential in scientific research and development. Our first guest is Vania Maphossa. So Vania is a PhD student in Biosciences and Public Health at the Eduardo Mondiane University in Maputo City, Mozambique. Before commencing a PhD, she earned a bachelor's in Biology and Health and a master's in Public Health at the same institution. Her current research largely focuses on unraveling immune responses to diseases endemic in Mozambique, including pediatric cancers, tuberculosis, and COVID-19. As part of her work, she's also an assistant coordinator of the Program for Endemic Diseases of Major Public Health Impact at the Mozambican National Institute of Health. Quite interesting.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. And let's talk about some of my work.
Yeah, great. I think I'm very excited to jump into the chat. And so you have background in biology, you have background in health, you've done a master's in public health and MPH. So I think what I want to just find out first of all is where did that interest in immunology started developing for you? What level in your career did you delve into immunology?
Well, I think it started in my bachelor, because in my, let's say, second year doing biology at Eduardo Mondiane University, I had for the first time the immunology lectures, and my teacher, she was very enthusiastic. She was very she could like mimic how cells migrate from blood to tissues and so on, and that really fascinated me. But let's say that at that moment I didn't know that I was in love by immunology. But okay, that seed was planted, and then I kind of think that I was in love by microbiology. And actually, when I get I say it was my second internship, and it was at the National Health Institute, I met the lab coordinator, and she was an immunologist. And I started, I saw her working in its own PhD. And once I asked her, what are you doing? I would like to do what you're doing and learn some things. And she said, okay, you can come, you can join. And she was doing his PhD on T-Rex, T-regulatory cells. And I asked her to join. She was actually doing immunophenotyping of cells and working with the flow cytometry. So I asked her to join and to see what they are doing. And that's when she, that very small seed came up. And that's when I started liking and enjoying, and I found out that, yeah, immunology, it's a very cool thing.
Really interesting. So the seed was sown during your undergraduate program, and then when you undergoing internships, that seed began to germinate because you took an initiative. You took the initiative to ask a researcher about her work. A researcher was an immunologist about her work, and then you started working with her, and that seed started going and going. So yeah, the seed has grown so well, and now you're pursuing your PhD, and even in that field of immunology, of course, there's that link to public health because of the context of your training. But what's that question, or what's that very important problem you're trying to address in Mozambique, or maybe in the context of Africa? So tell us about what you're working on.
Yes, one thing about our area of research is that, unfortunately, what we seek doesn't give answers right away. It's like it's science, basic science. We are giving like the baby steps for that. But I think it's important, but because we are like bringing information that is not there. Most of the information that we have in immunology, in characterization of cells, in how the cells work, it's concerning other people in different environments from Africa. I'm talking about most of the studies are on Chinese people, European people, American people. Sometimes the American people try to like bring out the American Afro-American people, but we now are very aware that the context, the environment that the person is exposed, even what we eat is like will modulate our immune response. So what we are doing, I mean, with the group that I'm working, we are trying to bring this information. We are trying to characterize the immune response in different diseases. Looking at, and of course, we are focusing the role of certain cells. In this case, we are focusing on the role of the T regulatory cells. But what we want to do, we want to bring this information, and as I said, it's not going to make effect right away. But we expect that with this information, we can help other scientists to think about, let's say, for example, when we talk about vaccines, when you talk about target therapies, maybe the targets from one population is not the same from our population. The way how we respond to certain infectious disease. For example, we have the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic right now, and it was noticeable that our epidemiology was very different from what other countries, let's say other continents presented. So this kind of information, although many countries already have done, it's important to also bring what we have, how our own immune response, African immune response, it's working. It's important to give that evidence, and to, even if it's just to compare, to see, okay, it's equal. But sometimes you can even find different things and think in different approaches for this population. So that is our aim.
Really interesting. So basically, I'm trying to understand immune responses in the African context. I think it's a very, very timely area of research, because like you highlighted, we saw a lot with COVID, and we've been seeing a lot even for several decades now with even some of the vaccines that we use in the continent, how that we don't get the expected level of immune responses to some of these products. And I love how the immense impact your work can have in the near future, because of course you said it's unlikely that you're going to make any translational impact right now, but then next couple of years from now, we could start making use of your findings. So I think you should tell us about some of the specific projects that have been part of your work in your PhD, or maybe from your master's, if you where your MPH has maybe had some connection with immunology, but some of the projects you've worked on in the context of immunology and in the context of the work, the focus you just explained, and let us know what were your findings, and then what were the implications or potential implications of those findings.
Yes, as I said, in the beginning, I had like my first love was, and I mean, at least the love that I was aware of was microbiology. That's why my work in my my master was regarding microbiology, but in the hospital environment. So it was not related to immunology. But now my PhD work, it's related to immunology. I'm studying the microenvironment of patients with SARS-CoV-2 and patients with leukemia. When I say microenvironment, of course, we cannot study everything. So once again, we had to focus on some sections of the immunology. So we look at, as I said many times, the T regulatory cells. Those are the things. Just a small point: the same scientist that I had to know what she was doing is now my supervisor, and so she kind of give me that love for the T regulatory cells. So we are looking to that on SARS-CoV-2 and like leukemic patients. But we also want to explore the microbiome, the gut microbiome, because now it's growing the evidence that the gut microbiome, the microorganisms that we have in our gut, they have an important role in modulation of the immune response and helping also in immune protection. But unfortunately, we don't have the capacity we don't have the capacity to look how all the aspects of the microbiome. So we focus now in looking at the fatty acid chains looking at the microbiome, but looking at the fatty acid chains. And finally, we are also looking at the soluble markers such as cytokines. And we are actually, with the COVID-19, we learned that cytokines and they have a very, very big role in development of pathologies. Yeah. So that basically this is what we are studying now. Regarding the main findings so far, we just have results regarding the cytokines. We have presented in some conferences, but yes, some conference, and I'm not sure if I can disclose because it's in submission in a journal. But what I can tell you now is that we actually find different patterns of production of, let's say, signature of the cytokine expression on our cells compared with what is written it's reported in other articles. And yeah, our work is pointing out for the role of other not so much discussed cytokines, but for our population, the cytokines were like better associated to severity, because most of the times when we study this kind of disease, we want to understand what is happening with those who develop the severe let's say the severe clinic of the disease, let's say, because as I say, SARS-CoV has different. We can go from it's a big spectrum. You can go from asymptomatic to severe. So most of the studies focus on looking what the severes have that is different from the other cases. And for our study, we find a different signature for these severe cases compared with what we found in other studies. And we aim to publish that, and we think it's interesting.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So, so basically, your work is largely focused on regulatory T cells, but you've also explored the gut microbiome, and you're studying fatty acid chains in gut microbiome. And then something interesting you found out is that the cytokines that are associated with severity in the African populace, of course, relating to the population in Mozambique that you are studying, are quite different from what has been reported over time in journals and from other parts of the world, and which means there should be like a different approach to how Africans are targeted for therapies and vaccines. That could be like possible implications.
Yes, mainly because SARS-CoV, at some point, people point out that targeted immunotherapies would be the answer. And if you don't find the right targets for our population, that would be
ineffective. Yeah. Well, wow, really interesting studies. So is there any other study you wanted to point out? Because I think you've also worked with pediatric cancers, leukemia. So are there any updates in that study regards leukemia that you wanted to share too, that you could also share?
Yes, For leukemia, we started with the same approach, but at the middle of the research, we look at that. We found that at least for the cytokines, we are not seeing a different pattern. But it is interesting that the results that we have might be used in another level. As I said in the beginning, basic research results sometimes that doesn't give information to be used now. But in case of the leukemia, just to give you a background here, our institution is the only institution using flow cytometry to actually give some diagnosis to the children. The flow cytometry outside, even in Africa, outside Mozambique, it's already being used. It's like people are already doing cytogenetics, but here in Mozambique, we just have our institute doing that. And we are trying to see if we can use cytokines to help, let's say, help on the prognosis of these children. We are aware that we are not going to have flow cytometry machines in our country, like in, let's say, 5 years. But we are thinking that we already have some machinery, some equipment, some knowledge. For example, with the HIV investment that had in our country, many hospitals have now ELISA machines. And let's say that we identify that a cytokine, it can be used to as a biomarker of prognosis for the leukemia that we have. So we could help our, let's say, clinicians outside Maputo. Just one note: we will not help to diagnose, because as you know, cytokines are produced in very different situations and different diseases. But the marker at least could help let's say that the clinician already confirmed, based on other tests, that this patient has leukemia. Let's now find out who are the patients that need his attention right away, who are more concerned to the clinician. So we could use these markers to help those clinicians to do that. So in leukemia, it's kind of the same approach, like characterizing the population, but also trying to help, let's say, the word is decentralization of prognosis and treatment of these patients. Because to try to bring from out the country to our city, it's very difficult. But if the clinician at least have a tool to let's say to follow this patient, it will be helpful. So we are trying to use these markers to do that.
Also very, very fascinating. So I think you are basically taking advantage of the fact that they are now like ELISA machines, even though you don't have flow cytometry across the country. But since they are ELISA machines, you can easily assay for the levels of these cytokines to know which patient or individual needs more rapid response or treatment compared to others, which one has maybe a more severe prognosis.
Yes. So let's say we're not in the validation level, because, as I said, first you must look at these patients, do a good characterization. But while you're doing that, we also are thinking that, yeah, maybe these that we find can be used also to help to a more say, direct impact on public health.
Yeah. Well, really interesting. So I think I love how that you have footing in public health and the field of immunology, and the context of your work. You're also thinking about the impact of your work in public health and how that, your findings can directly or indirectly improve, public health interventions for some of these diseases, or public health approaches for some of these diseases that are endemic in your setting. And it's obvious that your work has immense implications for Africa, for Mozambique, and potentially for the African continent, because I think the same model can be applied to other countries to also characterize the immune phenotype of their populations and to aid with managing diseases. I also want to ask some of the challenges that you've had to grapple with in the course of this study. Because of course you mentioned that there's this challenge with conducting research and then limited equipment and facilities in Mozambique for now. But what are like other challenges that you've had to grapple with in the course of your program or in the course of this study? in particular?
I think mostly are related to how we acquire the material to do the studies, because I have to say that our IDC, so the persons that have to judge our studies, they are actually, they understand, they are trying to help. We have people here who understand research, who understand the implications of this research. But the thing is, when it's difficult for you to acquire, let's say, reagents, that is when people ask if if the research that you're proposing is feasible, because people don't want to give time to things that will not happen, that you have to wait, like, let's say, a year to have the reagents. But mostly, and as I have to say, we don't have people producing this material. We don't have many people studying what we are studying, so it's like you are in a highland trying to do big things. So I think it's the most big problem is that if we can like escape from that problem, I think everything else would be more easily. People would be more acceptable, will understand more our research. Even the stakeholders, if they see that, okay, it's feasible, it's something that we can do here, they will like give more importance. They will give more how can I say, even investment to research. But at the stage that we are now, just to think in a research is a challenge. So imagine for a stakeholder, for someone who's giving you the money, like.
Yeah. I clearly understand the challenge with getting reagents. You could even order sometimes, and then it takes several months before you even get them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's true. So I'm just wondering about, because of the kind of study you are conducting, that kind of counters what has been known for long, or what is widely adopted globally. What has been the reaction or response to some of your findings so far?
At the beginning, let's say the funds from this work came from another idea that was from my supervisor, Dr. Raquel Chisumba. She wanted to look at the anti-inflammatory capacity of a plant, moringa, to be used on patients with SARS-CoV. But as I said, like we don't have the structure to do already a clinical study. So we started doing an in vivo study. So we have the cells from these patients to do these in vivo, use the extracts of the plant and study. So these are the main idea that give us the grant to do the study. So, and as we already have the samples, let's look not just to the plant, but also characterize this population. And we had the opportunity to present, as I said in the beginning, in some conference, and the feedback was very good. And people from outside, like, although when you go to a conference, you see other posters and presentations, people are talking about changing genes and using rats in vivo studies and so on. People look at our work and say, okay, you guys are doing this, very interesting. Do you want to come and discuss with us? What's your next steps? So I think the feedback is very good, and it gives us a lot of let's say, I will not say hope, but strength, because it says like, keep going, you're in the good path. Of course, right now we don't have like we have a collaboration to do the gut microbiome part of the study. It's with the University of Florence, but it's mostly part of the grant that my supervisor gets. But I have to say that we are amazed with the amount of people that appreciate what we are doing and have interesting to collaborate with us in other diseases.
Great. So thank you so much. I think that has been a very, very in-depth discussion on your work and the impact of your work, trying to understand, characterize immune responses in Mozambique, in Africa, and see the kind of implications it can have on targeted therapies, on vaccines, on drugs, and etc. So I think let's bring the conversation more to down home to your experience as a PhD student in Mozambique. I think people talk all the time about some of the challenges that come with studying in Africa for some of this this high level education kind of this higher level education here in the continent. And you've already cited some of them: challenges with funding, challenges with getting materials and reagents for your work. So I'm just wondering, what are like your next steps after you complete your PhD program? I think, how many years do you have left before you wrap up your program?
Sorry, I mean, on the PhD program?
Yes, like expected. When
1 year.
1 year, great. So
One
hopefully,
year.
yeah.
Yes.
So by 2025, you should be thinking of maybe doing a postdoc. Yeah, I
I would
understand.
love.
Open doing a postdoc or maybe transitioning into industry. So, like, what's your plan, especially in the context of the continent and the context of your experience so far? I know PhD can be difficult, but doing a PhD in Africa is another level of difficulty.
Yes.
So, yeah, just tell us about that.
I will go for your last question, like what is my plan? But I think that when you hold a PhD, people are expecting that now you are no longer allowed to wait to people bring their research for you, because most of the times when you do a PhD, it's based on an idea from someone, from some researcher, and you are inserted in a group and you realize that idea. You make it true. And once you have your PhD, you must be able to also to think, to have your own ideas to implement. So I think that maybe after my PhD, I will not run for a postdoc right away. I think I'd like to kind of, let's say, establish myself and try to look for grants for my own, like write my own grants, maybe start my own team. I will not aim like for people doing master, but let's say even people doing a bachelor. Let's have a small team and trying to actually, because PhD is not about the end, it's not holding the degree, it's about the journey. We learn so much thing along the journey, we learn so much new skills. And I think those skills are not supposed to stay with me. I'm supposed to I learn these things, but I have to somehow give to the others, to spread the thing. So I'm not sure if with a postdoc I will be able to do that, because it's I think the amount of stress of a postdoc, it's equal or bigger than a PhD. So I'm actually expecting to, after my PhD, I want to help the students and I think that when you help someone, you're consolidating your own knowledge, what you know, and you're learning twice, and that is getting consolidated. And maybe after that, I will think, yeah, let's now do a postdoc.
Yeah. I think very, very interesting career plans too, and I wish you the best with that plan, and hoping you get the support, the funding you need, and all of the assistance you need to make make these dreams come true, right? Yeah. So your experience so far in your PhD program, what time management technique, if any, works for you? How do you manage time and ensure that you're making progress as expected?
You did a good question. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I saw videos in the internet talking about time managing, saying do this and do that and so on. Like, for those struggling like me, I would like to say try your own thing. I try to do my best. I would not say that there is like a magic formula to do this, because the same way as we talk in microenvironments in immunology, it's the same with life. I cannot tell you do this when I don't know your settings, what you have, your problems, your situation. But I can tell you that focus in what you want to do and try to do what is most important for you to finish. But as I said before, what is most important in the PhD is not the end, it's not the degree, it's what you will learn along the PhD. because the process, because that is what will make you, as you say, a doctor of philosophy. It's not like you have the degree, it's what you have learned, what are your new skills. So I think going back to the question, how I sort out my time, like I'm most of the PhDs in my country, I'm working and also doing my PhD. Research. Most of the time, what I do is like my research. Yes, most of the time, what I do is like in the morning, I am a technician, a lab technician. I do what I have to do, and by night, I give some time for me to read or to accomplish some let's say essays when it's needed. But as I said, I cannot say that for a person that have a family and child. It's not work the same. But the thing is, if you really want to do it, if you really want to learn it, you will find time. Time will come.
I think I love that last statement. If you really want to do it, if you really want to learn a skill or end your PhD, you would find time. The time would come, or you would create the time.
Yes,
really.
Yeah, I can tell you, for example.
Yeah, go
my
ahead.
Supervisor always tell me that I have to focus, because I stay like 3 hours looking for a graph and a way to do like a simple loop in a graph, but I don't know how to do it, and I have to sit like 3 hours looking for the same graph. So you'll find time.
Yeah, I agree strongly with that. So also regards your experience as doing your PhD. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the skills that you've learned so far in the course of your program? You talked about, you've been emphasizing the fact that PhD is not about the degree, it's about the journey, it's about the process. So what are some of those skills that you've learned? So you could talk about general skills, like you just talked about having to manage time, or you could also focus on like lab related skills. I believe you've been working with the flow cytometer for a long time, but just tell us the skills that you've learned, the ones you want to share.
I have so many. I'll start like with simple things. For example, now there is a program in my country that is called PhD for Moss, and they are teaching us simple things that, like, for example, they are giving lectures in Excel. And when I saw it, I thought, this is just Excel, it's not interesting. But when I took the course, I understand that there is so many things that we can do with Excel, and it was very nice. It's a simple thing. It's important. Like, it's a consolidation of a thing that I use every day. Let's go like to something more intricate. For example, now for the PhD, we are not using ELISA to do the cytokines, but we use a Luminex machine. I never used that before, but with the PhD, I had the opportunity to use it and to learn how to use it. And it's magnific. And when we learn to use machines like that start opening your mind, and you start thinking, okay, what else I can do with these? What are the kind of studies? And as you said, the flow cytometry, which is like a big machine, like, and you stay like 3 days on the lab just to do like 5 samples, but it's very nice. Yeah, and I have learning. I'm still learning.
Yeah. I think learning is continuous. So are there any mistakes or failures you've had in the course of your program that you think back and like, I did that at one point?
Sorry, some mistakes? Come again?
Yeah, I'm asking about if are there any mistakes you've made in the course of your program, and maybe that you still think back on that still haunt you until now, or failures you've had in the course of your work, maybe some silly mistakes you made that you can share?
I would say I was procrastinating a lot some activities because I was afraid to listen no. So one of the things on the PhD, it's you get used to no. It's not okay. It's not ready. I don't have the funds. When you apply to grants, for example, most of the times you read a grant and you say, oh, no, I will not try this grant because it looks so much fancy and high, it's not for me. But it's part of the process. You try to apply for those grants, you try to show your work to someone, and someone say no, because as many people already says, no's are important more than the yes. So I think that most of the mistakes that I did was procrastination, because of my afraid to hear a no, or because I was looking for the right time to do this and this. There's no right time. So yeah, I think procrastination is what kills me most.
Great. And I hope you're no longer procrastinating, or your procrastination has reduced considerably.
They reduce it.
Okay, so I think let's also hear from a perspective concerning African governments and how they can support you more, PhD students, PhD candidates, support research in the continent. I think it's an issue that has been overflowed. We keep talking about it in Africa, and then the government keeps saying they're going to get things done, but really don't see things happening. So from your own thoughts, how do you think what do you think the government should start doing differently? And even aside from the government, are there ways that you think PhD students can also explore other options to build independence and to just survive in the context of the continent, from your experience, with the little support that is usually provided?
Okay, I think that, as you said, the options are not, we don't have much options. Most of the PhD, if you are not already in a research institution, the only other thing that you think is to go to a university and give lectures. So 2 options. But as I said, I kind of understand sometimes the government, because unfortunately in Africa, we're still dealing with a lot of other problems, and sometimes they don't give the right attention to education. The answers, for most of the problems, the answer is on education, but sometimes the government is not ready to understand what the results that we are giving. For example, I've seen a lot of works from PhD persons in finding new strains of let's say of corn that can be used in environments with low amount of water. What I'm trying to say is that from one side we have us as the PhDs who we are not aware of our potential, and you also have the government who are like dealing with so much stuff to understand that in the PhD we have the answer to so many of the things that are happening. Because I will go as we said, we have biologists with information. For example, the study that we are trying to bring, we are trying to bring a solution for a very big public health problem, like following up people with leukemia. But as I said, how do I translate what I'm doing, what I'm studying, in order to the government to understand that let's invest on this, and this on long term will be a solution for our problem. So I think we have to take our time as a PhD to understand what, as you asked, what you want to do with your PhD. Are you doing a PhD just to have a degree and maybe be some boss in your department, or you are doing your PhD to actually bring difference? If you as a PhD understand what you want to do, then you will facilitate the job of the government in showing or in knowing how you must use you. Because most of the time people when do PhDs, we already know it's mostly because it's most related to I want a degree because it's maybe it's going to give me more money, or it's going to give a good position in my job. But the main goal of being a PhD, as we already talked, is the process, is you're learning a skill, and that if that skill would be important to your country, if that skill will give more, let's say, if that skill will be useful for your country. So yes, it's a problem of government. They don't understand the importance of a PhD, but sometimes we as PhDs, we don't understand our own importance in the community.
Yeah, I think I really love that balanced and very balanced perspective you just shared. So the government, the African government or the government has a problem of not, giving attention or realizing the potential in PhDs or in research to solve some of these challenges that they are focusing on. And even the PhDs sometimes they don't even know their potential or they are not maximizing that potential to address pertinent challenges or issues in their context, in the context of their countries or in the context of their continent. Are we going to the next phase of the interview where I get to ask you some fun questions? So I'll ask you two random questions and you provide an answer to them. So the first question I want to ask you is, if you were not a scientist, what other role do you think you would have fitted into? If you were not a scientist, what else would you have been?
Oh, a musician.
Musician. Wow.
Yes, I would definitely be a musician.
Oh, great. So you still sing or it's a gone dream?
Only on the church and on the bathroom. Unfortunately, yeah, music is also a science, and I think it takes time, so I have to drop that dream.
So you sacrifice music to help Mozambique and help Africa tackle infectious diseases. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. I'm really quite surprised to hear that, but yeah, great. Your second task is to describe your current research work to a 5-year-old. So maybe your niece or nephew or a random child in your neighborhood asks you, Auntie, what do you do in the lab? How do you explain your research to that 5-year-old?
Okay, how do I explain to, I was thinking my nephew.
Okay.
Okay, I would say to him, your body has soldiers and your brother body also has soldiers. What I'm trying to see is differences between the soldiers that you have in your body and the soldiers that your brother have, because you are both different. You live different way, you have different weights, you eat different things. So what your aunt is doing in the lab is looking for those soldiers and looking at different characteristics of how they are characterized, how they are, what is the color, and I want to see the difference between the soldiers of your brother and your soldiers.
Beautiful. I think I should give you a round of applause. Right. So I think that's amazing. Right. So you're looking for differences between the soldiers in their bodies. So yeah, based on how the soldiers are dressed or what they present with and all of that. Yeah, I think that's a very, very beautiful description of your work.
Thank you for listening to this episode on ImmunoAfrica. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to share it with your network. You will learn first about future episodes and get other immunology related updates by following ImmunoAfrica _ other Immunology in Africa podcast on social media. See you on the next episode.